standard procedure is to stand when addressing the council. So if we could please remember that, given that it has been quite a long time. Item 1, apologies for absence. I have Councillor Leslie Fage, Councillor Russell, Councillor Ramsey, and Councillor Alban. Declarations of interest. Does any member have any pecuniary or non-pecuniary interest? Councillor Bond.
I'd like to declare pecuniary interest in item 9B.
Thank you. Anybody else? Councillor Foster.
Yeah, non-pecuniary item 9I. I know the resident. I've not had any conversations about it. I happen to know them.
Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay, thank you. Item 3, Town Mayor's announcements. So the Mayor does not have any announcements other than that she's on holiday. And as Deputy Mayor, I don't have any announcements either. So we will move on. Item 4, public open session, to adjourn for a period of up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions or to address the council through the chairman. These are pertaining to matters strictly on this agenda, and each speaker will have 1 3-minute slot. We have a couple of members of the public present. Do they wish to address the council either via Zoom in the back room or via the standing near the door in the chamber?
There are no members of the public that wish to speak during the public open session.
Okay, thank you, Helen. That's fine, so I'll move on. So item 5, invited speaker. So we have a great pleasure to welcome Mr. Mario Santos Costa, who's going to be addressing the council on tennis opened up and that scheme in Biggleswade. So are we able to go to Mr. Costa, please? I believe he's joining via Zoom.
Hello, good evening.
Hello, we can hear you, we can't see you. But,
can't see me.
Okay.
Oh, I don't.
Is there a visual part to your presentation, Mr. Costa? If not, we're happy to listen to you because we can hear you very clearly.
Hello, I think you might be able to see me now. Is that better?
Yes, much better.
Hello, good evening. So I think yeah, the administrator must have accepted my video. How are we all doing? Okay.
That's got it. Yes, very well, thank you. Please, we're
yes.
Looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Lovely. Yeah. So thank you for having myself. I believe my my partner Fergus is also on the call, but I'll be obviously leading the conversation. And obviously any questions, I suppose we'll both answer them. But I believe I sent a presentation over recently. I've been in touch with a few members of the council just to sort of explore the situation that we're trying to look into. That's obviously to opening up tennis within Biggleswade. So whether you've had an opportunity to review that presentation beforehand, obviously it's probably better to go through that in your own time, or if you have already, due to obviously the length of the slides and information rather than me presenting now. So, but I'll give a quick summary. So as you know, I'm Mario, and obviously I'm leading this, and my colleague who's with this, following this with me, is Fergus. And obviously, as I say, the plan is to open up tennis in Biggleswade. So we feel there's a lot of potential within Biggleswade with the current courts that are in place at Drove Road. And we wish to explore that in terms of how we can improve tennis within Biggleswade by using those facilities. We have lots of sort of ideas and plans of how we can do that with obviously integrating into schools, obviously getting the residents involved, and obviously trying to get a club up and running essentially. And there'll be lots, you know, it's a big obviously topic for discussion and to review, and obviously we will need support and maybe some funding, and that's obviously where you guys come in, as well as speaking to people like the LTA, the governing body for tennis, and other sort of governing bodies and support them what they might be. So that's basically, I won't obviously go into too much information, as I say, because it's all in the presentation, and obviously yeah, that's where the bulk of the information is. So.
Thank you very much, Mario. Are there any questions from members for Mario? We're happy to field a few questions. Any questions for Mario? No. Just to be clear, I have one myself actually.
Yes.
So you're forgive me, I haven't seen the presentation.
Okay, no problem.
That's okay. I know some members have, but so are you? Which schools in particular are you connecting with, and are you likely to be using some of potentially our facilities as well at Drove Road? And have you had some decent conversations with our staff about that?
Okay, so yeah, so if you haven't seen the presentation, then I'll elaborate a little bit more. So it's a completely new concept because obviously we know that those facilities there at Drove Road are, you know, they're in terms of the heart of Biggleswade. It's obviously when you look at the surrounding maps and obviously within the presentation, it shows that there's schools all around and it literally is located in the middle. So we feel it's in a perfect location, and our plan is to obviously, as I mentioned, hopefully build a club into that with those courts, and obviously that's when we look to integrate tennis within the school. So we'll put professional coaching programs into place. I'm a qualified coach, so is my colleague Ferg, and we also have contacts and network where we would grow that. And our plan is to potentially go into schools and provide a service so they could experience tennis, and obviously then bring it back to the club, so then they can grow tennis, you know, for themselves for the future as well. So yeah.
Super. Any further comments? I think this is probably a discussion which we can take to PLOS at some point. We have a public land and open spaces committee which do a great job managing many of our facilities, including tennis courts. So we'd be quite happy to partner on that. I'm sure. I won't speak for the committee, but I think there's a good conversation to be had there.
Great.
Sorry, go on.
Yeah, as I say, the information is in the presentation, so without obviously repeating myself, but yeah, I think once you get a gist of all of that, then it'll be a bit more clearer in terms of what we're proposing, and then again, maybe have a follow-up meeting or from there. So I think that would be the best.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much, Mario. I think this sounds like a great initiative, and we look forward to working with you in future.
Yes, likewise. Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you. Could the technology people remove now? Lovely. Thank you so much. Okay. Item 6, members' questions. Are there any members' questions? No members' questions. I'm let off lightly again. Item 7, minutes and recommendations of meetings. So we have several sets of minutes to go through relating to town council meetings and the annual statutory meeting, I believe, or annual assembly. So I'm starting with the minutes. I'm starting with the minutes of the 6th of April. So this is page 7 in our packs as they're printed out. So I'm going to start on page 7. So we're going through firstly for accuracy, please. Is there anything on page 7? I have something on page 7. Councillor Albin's name should be on here as well. Councillor Albin. Page 7. Okay. Anything for accuracy on page 8? Page 9. Councillor Foster.
Item C, page 8, item C, minutes of the PLOS meeting 18th March. This is relating to the tree we're going through. On page 26, it's item 6 and item 9.
Okay.
And the last sentence, just pedantic, I think we should say this minute rather than these minutes.
Okay. Is that all right? Is that clear, Sean?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So that's page 9. Anything else on page 9? Okay, still for accuracy, then page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. Page 17. Okay. Are these okay to be moved as a true and accurate record? Yes, I'm seeing nods. Thank you. Okay. Item 7B for members to receive the minutes of the council meeting of Tuesday, the 27th of April. So this was an extra meeting that we had in the diary. I'm on page 18 then for accuracy. Anything on accuracy on page 18? Councillor Albin's name again. Anything on page That was from me, by the way. Page 19, anything on page 19, accuracy? Anything on page 20, page 21, and page 22? No, so those are an accurate reflection subject to that. Is that okay? I'm seeing nods, thank you. Okay, item 7C, for members to receive the minutes of the annual statutory meeting. It was the annual statutory meeting. So I'm on page 23 in our packs now. So again, we're going through for accuracy. So page 23, page 24, page 25, page 26, page 27, page 28, page 29, page 30. Okay, so these are a true and accurate record. Is that okay? Thank you. Item 8, matters arising. So we'll go through the same sets of minutes again, this time for any matters arising. So I'm on the minutes of the meeting of Tuesday, the 6th of April. So we're back on page 7. So matters arising, please. Anything on page 7? No. Page 8. Page 9. Page 10. Page 11. Page 12. Page 13. Page 14. Page 15. Page 16. Councillor Pullinger.
Item 11F, the first resolution to defer the writing to the Minister of Local Government to a later meeting. Obviously, it's not on the agenda this evening. Will it definitely be on the agenda at the next meeting? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Item 7, page, anything else on page 16? Anything on page 17? No, okay, so no matters arising other than that one from Councillor Pullinger. So I'm moving on to 8B, which is matters arising from the Town Council meeting Tuesday the 27th of April. I'm on page 18, any matters arising? Page 19, matters arising? I have one, 5B. Councillor Alban asked about pigeons. Do we know what we're going to do about some of the pigeons in the town centre? Has some thought been given to that?
The place shaping manager has been in contact with Central Beds and is investigating some potential solutions, and they're also working in partnership with the Deputy Public Realm Manager, who's got some experience connected with this, but we don't have a final solution as yet.
Wonderful. Okay. Anything else on page 19? Thank you. Page 19, no. Any matters arising, page 20? Matters arising, page 21 and 22. Councillor Pullinger.
Item 9A. Well, firstly, I don't recall yet receiving the 2019 conditions survey. And I was just wondering if there was any general update on what's happening around the Grove Road Chapel and the repairs.
There isn't an update. It's work to be done. So there's a lot of work for me personally to be involved with that. And at the moment, other things have taken priority. It's on my list of things to do.
Yeah. I think we'll start to see a bit more of that as we move through this council meeting and then to F&GP and PLOS, which was the agreed path of progression for that. So we'll see that condition report emailed complete alongside other documents when there's something to be considered, I'm sure. Okay, anything else on page 22? No, thank you. Matters arising, finally then, matters arising 8C, from any matters arising from the annual statutory meeting. So I'm on page 23, matters arising. 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Okay, thanks very much, everybody. That's everything for the last sets of minutes. Thank you. So we're now moving on to planning applications. We have quite a few to get through. as is so often the case. So I'm starting with 9A, the vacant plot south of Pegasus Drive, adjacent to the rear of Unit 6 on Montgomery Way. This is a variation on condition. Any comments, please?
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Okay, thank you. Item 9B, Councillor Bond has declared a pecuniary interest but has asked to speak prior to leaving the chamber. So Councillor Bond, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Biggleswade Crossing, it's been around for a long time. The information you'll find about it shows, it only shows you accidents. It's been a scene of suicides and loss of life. The primary reason for it is to close for safety reasons. And that's been handled by the HIP fund. But if you go back, it's not the solution which we have in front of us today. It's not a British solution. It's partly shrinking violent. It's massive, but it's constrained by the fact it's a bridle crossing. It's a bridle route, so horses can only go, I think it's 1 in 40, 1 in 15 maximum with slopes. So effectively, you've got a 200-metre ramp either side, or 185 metre each side. And you've got a bridge which spans best part of 60 metres across the railway line. Because the height of it, you talk about 11.5 metres in height. This is what proposes the Network Rail for it. I've been involved in this since 2004 when I was first approached by WSP Network Rail regarding East Coast Railway closure programme. That actually died a death in June 2015. This new proposal has been around since for HIP, responding HIP items. But what is really instrumental about this is trying to get the best solution for our unfortunately something that is not looking good, it doesn't look good, but try and get the best for those who use it and for the community. And to that aim, I found out in December 2019 that the original proposal, which was June 2015, to include steps on the bridge, had been removed. As part of my negotiation with Network Rail, I've been able to persuade them to reinstate the steps because, I mean, I've got friends who've had hip replacements and other things, and sometimes steps are actually easier than walking along the ramps. So thankfully, Network Rail have actually reinstated the steps. We actually get to this application tonight. This application is for a massive steel bridge, but Network Rail have committed themselves to providing pathways which are suitable for cycle routes, fencing. But what is in this plan, which is, in my opinion, lacking, is sufficient native planting to give a better experience for that route. When you're trying to shield an 11.5 metre bridge, you can't put in whips which are about and expect them to grow up in 100 years. None of us can be around in 100 years' time. Trees have to go at a certain size and native species, of course. There's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of, if you look at the landscaping plan, it looks like it was done in the last minute. It doesn't seem very well thought out of. So work needs to be done to make this as best as possible. So that those who actually have no choice but to use this route will actually be able to see something which looks as best as we possibly can. I've done my best to try and help achieve that, and I leave it to you gentlemen and other colleagues. I'll leave the meeting there. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. Okay, thank you. Comments, please. Councillor North.
Thank you, Chairman. It seems to me the only alternative to this, or something very similar to it, is to not do anything at all. And I don't know how deeply that has ever really been considered. That you simply close the level crossing and leave it and not have a bridge. But otherwise, as much as people may object to the sheer size, Councillor Bond has referred to the lack of landscaping, which may be something that could be rectified, could be improved when the town council could get involved in practicing the trees. It's going to be very big and very obtrusive in the environment. And the only alternative to that is simply not to build it at all. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor North. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So I fully support the need for a bridge, but in my opinion, the bridge as proposed is a dreadful design, and I think Network Rail need to go back to the drawing board. In my opinion, the current design has absolutely no architectural integrity, and I'd rather see it delayed and done well than have this appalling design built and probably outliving most of us in the room. There's simply no excuse or justification, in my opinion, for bad design like this. And I think Biggleswade deserves a design icon rather than an eyesore. I've done a bit of Googling. I'd happily share some photographs of well-designed bridges of a similar scale, and I don't consider any effort has really gone into looking at this from an architectural perspective. So I would propose objecting on the grounds that the bridge is not in keeping with the stylistic content or scale of the local area. The proposed bridge will have a significant negative impact on the visual amenity of the area, and the proposed development fails to include sufficient landscape. Thank you.
Councillor Knight has made a proposal. Is there a second for that proposal? I'm not seeing any indication. Comments, please. Councillor Pullinger.
Okay, thank you. So I think I echo many of Councillor North's comments. The bridge is, I think, essential that we move forward with for the safety reasons. And I think from the very early consultations, we've always known it was going to be a double back bridge of the style that's been proposed here. I am pleased that the steps have been re-implemented, because at the previous consultations for the rights of way, the indication was they weren't going to be included, and that was a concern for me. But I do think there is some work to do on the landscaping. So what I would like to propose is that we don't object to the application, but we put in a strong recommendation for planning conditions to be made around the landscaping to minimise the visual impact on the surrounding area.
Okay. Is there a seconder for Councillor Pullinger's proposal? Okay, that's seconded. Further comments, colleagues? Councillor Strawn.
I think Councillor Pullinger's proposal is quite the right one to make. I think we've put on conditions that we would like to see, particularly the landscaping, etc., to try and minimise the impact. But it's essential that we have something like this at that site to complement the green wheel, because shutting it would mean that there'd be no crossing there at all. That would take away the point of the green wheel. And although it may not be sightly, the alternative of continuing to have the crossing there, I don't think is acceptable. We've waited for a long, long time to get this. And I think it would be wrong to object to it because the bridge isn't necessarily architecturally supreme. We've seen lots of architectural monstrosities around the town, and this one hopefully could be shielded because it's in a place where I think screening could be achieved. And I'd also mention the fact that hopefully at some stage in the not too distant future, we'll be able to get a bridge of an appropriate quality, shall we say, to the south of Biggleswade to complete the green wheel that way, because these crossings across the main coast, east coast line are absolutely abominable and they've got to be stopped. So I support Councillor Pullinger's proposal for those reasons. We've got to save lives.
Thank you, Councillor Strawn. Any further comments? Councillor Foster.
I'm torn with this, I have to say. I think many of us are torn. I'm torn because I completely agree with Councillor Knight. And I think we've got to acknowledge the fact that this thing is at best architecturally ineffective, shall we say. It is not something that's good on the eye, and I think we've got an issue that clearly our residents are concerned about that aspect of it, and they're concerned about the fact that it's not in the current location of the current crossing, and we've been through the reasons why that is, and essentially there's a compromise, an unsatisfactory compromise that I think we have to make. And the unsatisfactory compromise for me is acknowledging the fact that, as Councillor North says, we do nothing. I don't think with respect, Councillor, I don't think that timescales allow for a redesign, and that's unfortunate, and it's not acceptable. But that's where we're at. We've got a situation with other things that are going to get in the way. That's why it's an unsatisfactory compromise. We've got something that's going to be not great for Biggleswade necessarily, but it does alleviate some of the other issues around bridleways and footpaths, etc. So hence the compromise, and I will be supporting the motion to not object with those sort of concerns.
Okay. Any further comments from anybody? So we have a proposal which has been seconded. Councillor Pullinger, so you're proposing no objection, but with a recommendation for landscaping.
A strong recommendation for conditions, planning conditions around adequate landscaping to minimise the visual impact.
Okay. Do we want to be more specific, given the concerns which have been raised by everybody who's spoken? Do we want to be more specific about what some of those conditions might look like? Size of trees, for example, or types of fencing? Maybe we're getting too specific, but so Councillor Pullinger.
So I think we probably would be getting too specific there, but I think it would be worth commenting in there that we would like to be consulted proactively on the discharge of condition.
Okay. Is that all right with the seconder? Who seconded? Councillor Strawn did. Okay, so the proposal is that we make no objection, but we have planning conditions. We'd like to see strong planning conditions around landscaping, which we would then want to be consulted on as and when they come through. Are there any last comments on that? No. Okay, so all those in favour of Councillor Pullinger's proposal, please show. All of those against? That's carried. Thank you. Can we invite Councillor Bond back in, please?
Technique.
I'll try that again.
Okay. We welcomed you back here, and we didn't move on several agenda items, which is what happened to me once when I was outside the room. Item 9C, land off of Drove Road. So this is land adjacent to number 1 Drove Road. Proposed 6 dwellings with associated car parking. Comments, please. Councillor Knight.
So I'm concerned, I haven't got a specific proposal, but I'm concerned that this could be overdevelopment. It seems like quite a small plot, quite high density. We know that part of Drove Road is very busy. I'm concerned about access. They appear to have sufficient parking, but to my mind, that is a rather large number of properties in quite a small space.
Okay. Further comments? Further comments? Councillor North, Foster, beg your pardon, Mark Foster, Councillor Mark Foster.
Sorry. I understand Councillor Knight's concerns, and on this particular occasion, I don't necessarily agree. I think it's a brownfield site within the sort of centre of Biggleswade almost. There is parking there. Yes, Drove Road is a sort of a challenging road, but I don't personally think it's overdevelopment on that site. So I would not be wanting to object to this one.
Okay, so we have a proposal of no objection. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Okay, that's seconded, Councillor Frank Foster. Are there any further comments? No, I had 2 from the chair. So one regards the bus stop. There is a bus stop directly in front of one of the access points, as far as I can tell, for those properties. So I think maybe we could make a comment about not losing that bus stop. Would need to be relocated, you know, whether it's 100 yards away, probably north. The other slight concern is around that junction. We know we have concerns with other larger applications which are impacting the junction of Drove Road, Eagle Farm Road and London Road. And maybe, I don't know, but whether that the extra traffic has any impact on how that junction may or may not function. I'm slightly torn myself. It is only 6 houses rather than 400, but whether any thoughts were made for that. So we have the proposal. Are there any further comments? Councillor Knight.
Just briefly, would Councillor Foster accept an amendment to include subject to neighbours?
Of course. Very generous, Councillor Foster. As Councillor Foster, are you okay to include the comments about the bus stop as well and not wanting to lose? Yes. Yeah. We probably don't want that moved closer to the junction, I would have thought. But okay, so the proposal is no objection, subject to neighbours. All those in favour, please show. Against? No. Okay, thank you. That's carried. Item 9D, 19 South View, single storey rear extension. Comments, please.
Move no objection.
Is that okay? Subject to neighbours. Good. Item 9E, 19 Drove Road, single storey rear extension. Comments, please.
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Thank you. Is that okay? Yep. Item 9F, 14 Compton Mead, proposed 2-storey extension to the rear. Comments, please. Councillor Mark Foster.
Just a minor comment. I don't think there's any real concern about the actual development. I think this itself is not a problem. The drawings seem to show front and back. I seem to the drawings show the front elevation as the back elevation. So it confused me initially, and I had to go and look in a bit more detail. But I think actually, when you look at the plans, there's no real concern there in terms of what's being proposed. No objection.
Subject to neighbours. Okay. Is that okay with everybody? No objection, subject to neighbours. Okay, I'm not seeing anybody say to the contrary. Okay, item 9G, 12 Popal Road. I think we've seen this one before. Conversion of garage to home office and 1.5 side extensions for a home office and a gym. Comments, please.
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Non-subject to neighbours. Is there a second? Any further comments? Sorry, Councillor Bullinger? No. The one I did have, so I went and looked at this. It's showing 2 parking spaces. However, one of those car parking spaces is currently a raised patio at the front of the house. So if Councillor Knight is okay, because it's looking like they'll have 2 parking spaces there, but at the moment it's not flat enough to be 2 parking spaces. So maybe we need to mention that the slightly raised patio at the front needs to go in order to make 2 parking spaces. Is that all right? Should we just get a quick show of hands on that, if that's okay? In favour? Okay, thank you. That's carried. 9H, 2 Hunt Road, conversion of garage to habitable room, opposed to an inhabitable room, with new roofings to the rear and changes to windows. Comments, please.
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Is that all right with everybody? Any comments? No? Okay. Subject to neighbours it is. 9I, 1 Holly Close, a 2-storey side and rear extension following the demolition of the existing garage. Comments? Subject to neighbours, is that okay? Thank you, Councillor Brown. 9J, 1 Bunyan Road, single-storey front extension. Comments, please.
Move no objection, subject to neighbours.
Right. Item 9K, I think that's pronounced Quine, Stoneworks, 3 Potton Road, workshop extension. Any comments, please? Councillor Knight.
I would broadly move no objection, subject to neighbours, but can we stress the potential noise impact on the neighbours? Because looking at the plans, the workshop would go very close to the boundary. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, that's been seconded. Any further comments? No, so we're no objection, but strong mention of noise complaints around neighbours. Is that okay with everybody? Yes, thank you. Item 9L, works to trees on chapel fields. I'm not sure why this is with the planning applications, but we'll take it. Works to trees in conservation areas, in the conservation area. Beg your pardon. Comments, please. No objection, no issues. Okay. M. Now I'm really not sure why this one's on the agenda. Works to trees on Ickwell Green. in Ickwell.
It's the wrong ward.
We
shouldn't comment.
I think we shouldn't comment on that one. We'll move on. So no comment on M. Unless anyone feels really strong about it. Item 9N, planning appeal, 26A High Street, Biggleswade. I couldn't find much detail on this.
Find anything.
Comments, Councillor Bond.
This is the result of a enforcement action by CBC, because the windows, the timber windows have been replaced by UPVC, the chimney's been removed as well. The enforcement action was lodged by CBC, and the applicant has the opportunity to appeal it to the planning inspector. What this request coming to you is saying, if you object, if you actually agree with CBC enforcement regarding that the timber window should be reinstated compared to what's been put there, then the council needs, the town council needs to make representations to the planning inspectorate about this appeal.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Chairman. My observation is I had a look at this property at the weekend, and what struck me is they've got a white PVC door in the side of the property, which looks totally out of keeping with the whole area. Now, you can have UPVC, which is appropriately coloured, have a wood effect, but the door doesn't seem to be subject to this application at all, but it looks absolutely awful in that part of the town. So I think we should be supporting the Central Beds Council in ensuring that the changes that are made, or any changes that are made, are in keeping with the conservation area and the town centre.
Okay, that's a proposal from Councillor Strawn. That's seconded, Councillor. No? Okay, okay, I'll just ask for a seconder. Is there a seconder to Councillor Strawn's proposal? Councillor North, thank you. Councillor Foster.
My query is, my eyesight is not 100% at the moment, but on page 87 on the planning application, it says that this has been granted on the 14th, 24th.
That's 24, I think.
2021, 4th, 2021 says granted. Am I in the wrong phone? It seems very similar.
14. Go on, Councillor Bond, please. Thanks.
What is correct? It's number 24, that's a different planning application altogether.
Okay.
Right. Okay. So we have a proposal that we should be providing representations basically in support of what Central Beds are recommending on this property. I think it's a Halifax building, is that right? No.
No, it's a point of clarification. You know, Snappy.
Oh, so that's what it is. Yes.
It's that bit, but that's blocked there. 26A is the one in the passageway on the Market Square side of the.
Right. Yes,
building.
clear. I know which one you're talking about now. Thank you, Councillor Pullinger.
Yeah, I'm not going to ultimately disagree, I think, with the proposal. Just an observation, really, in that I think these UPVC windows are clearly out of keeping, and I think more could have been done to have UPVC windows that were more in keeping. But actually, when I went to look at them this evening or this afternoon, what struck me was actually, despite them being out of keeping, they actually look far better than the wooden framed windows next door, which just haven't been maintained. So I think there is ultimately a balance in making sure that we make the conservation area remain in keeping with its historical appearance, but also recognise the fact that it's no point doing that if then they go into a state of disrepair. So it was just really an observation, but I'll leave it there.
Any further comments? No. Okay, so we have a proposal to go back to basically agree with the position that Central Beds are taking over this enforcement. All those in favour of Councillor Strawn's proposal, please show. 1, 2. Okay, that's carried. Any against? Abstentions? Okay, that's carried. Thank you. Item 9O, railway station Biggleswade, which is Station Road, obviously. So railway determination, installation of a new ramp, footbridge and lifts to Biggleswade railway station. Comments, please. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. Broadly supportive of this. The only real concern I have, and I'm not sure this is a planning matter, and I know this is the planning application and perhaps not a broader consultation, is access via the existing bridge. So the detail of the plan proposes to fit sliding gates on the bridge to potentially block access to the platforms from the current bridge. The plans say when the station isn't open, but there's also a hint that this may be an operational decision. So my worry is that it seems quite likely that these sliding gates may be closed quite a lot of the time, potentially trending towards all of the time. And for residents to the east of the railway line, this means that potentially to gain access to the platforms, they have quite a bit further to walk, because they now, rather than just nipping down the steps, they have to go all the way across and then double back effectively, maybe adding an extra minute to their journey. So that does concern me, and I'd prefer to see that those existing bridges remain open and accessible. I appreciate they don't meet modern standards, but of course, users of the railway have the choice to use the new path or the old path.
Right, Councillor Pullinger.
Yes, so really around similar issue, really, it's around that bridge, and I think there's also a potential safety issue in terms of egress from the station in an emergency, because the proposed route out will send everyone down what is a very narrow thoroughfare of the new bridge. So I would actually propose no objection, but then with, again, asking for a planning condition that the gates on the existing bridge remain open during the station operating hours.
Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal? Woodhead. Okay, any further comments? Councillor Foster.
Just really, what I'd like to say, I think we absolutely should be welcoming this. As Biggleswade the residents have been looking for lifts, we've needed this in Biggleswade for however long time, and I think we should be embracing that and acknowledging the fact that whilst there are a few concerns that we have, we can deal with those through funding conditions. We should absolutely be embracing it, and certainly not objecting to it in any way, shape or form.
But I'll come to you in a second, Councillor Pullinger. Is it better to have a planning condition that the gate should be open, or are the gates just not needed at all? And should that be what our response is? Councillor Pullinger.
Okay. No, as I think it's their asset. If they want to protect it when it's not open, I think that's up to them. And I don't think we should say there shouldn't be a gate at all. What I would say, I'm quite happy to amend the response to be something that's much more generally positive than just no objection, subject to the request for that planning condition.
Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So my only concern is trains pretty much come 24 hours a day. So I'm not quite sure how you determine when the station is open. I wouldn't like to see the barriers closed just because there aren't staff on the station, for example, which could actually be quite a lot of the time. So I would prefer there were no barriers, or the barriers were always open.
Okay. Are there any further comments on this? It sounds like we're broadly supportive of this issue. There's a bit of contention. Councillor Thomas.
Currently at the moment, we have a situation where it is open all the time. So what's the difference? Why is this needed? I can't see any reason, as Councillor Knight said, apart from probably Christmas Day.
Yes. That's probably the only day that the trains don't stop.
I'm baffled why we want to lock it all and make it difficult to get in and out.
Okay.
There's no reason for it. We're trying to get extra access for people, not make it worse. And if a train's delayed and it's shut and nobody can get in, then.
Thank you. Councillor Strawn.
From a practical point of view, I think they might be looking at gates in particular, because I've found quite often that they've got little yellow marker tape across the entrance to the station when trains aren't running or aren't stopping. So that might be one of the reasons why they might want it, but I'm fully supportive of it being kept open. But that's just a thought. They might want proper gates so that when trains aren't stopping at all, the gates are closed. So it's quite obvious that people can't get to the platform. But
Okay, Councillor Knight.
Just very briefly, so maybe I'm being cynical, but the steps are currently in quite a bad state of repair if you look at them. So I suspect this is a path towards being able to close them permanently in the future if we don't fight to keep them open.
That was my worry as well. Okay, so the proposal is no objection, but generally very positive and welcoming the fact that we are now looking at this new access, but would like to see a planning condition. The proposal is to see a planning condition such that the gates are open as long as the station is operating and only close when it's not. Councillor Strawn.
Yes, that suggestion, instead of saying we've got no objection, we fully support the application subject to a planning condition that the gates are kept open when the station is operational. So instead of saying no objection, we support the application. It's just more positive.
Okay, no, that's very well. I presume Councillor Punch is okay with that. Are there any last comments? No. Okay, so all those in favour of the proposal? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, that is carried. Item 9P. So we're back at the railway station. This is the creation of a transport interchange and associated uncontrolled pedestrian crossings, rearrangement and resurfacing of footways, bus concourse, demolition of buildings, landscaping works, and ancillary works. So if I might just provide a very brief update. So we currently have a holding objection on this application until we see what is deemed to be sufficient progress around bus standing away from Century House and the associated bus routes. So that is our current position. We also provided representations which I think are summarised on our papers, including why or some of the challenges we had with it, including number of bus stops, and various comments around Palace Street and Station Road, which I think we were supportive of. So comments, please, councillors. Councillor Knight.
Thank you. So firstly, I note that we received these updated plans about 2 hours ago, so we haven't had very long to consider them, which is really unsatisfactory. So I think there has definitely been positive progress, and it is good to see that there appear to be more shelters. I remain concerned that the emerging local plan states there should be a high quality waiting area. We have plans, we don't have any elevations, so I cannot determine whether these shelters are of a high quality. I can't see whether they're heated, I can't see whether they have sides or doors, or whether it's just a roof. So I suggest that the plans that we have are not sufficient for us to come to a good decision. I'm also very concerned about the toilets. So there was earlier conversation about the possibility of an accessible toilet. I notice on the plan it says potential to have toilets, which doesn't sound like a commitment to me. So that's also of concern. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Peter.
Just wanted to highlight to Councillor Knight. A few hours ago, this information wasn't available on the website. It's only a matter as a result of Councillor Whitaker's involvement to draw this to our attention that we've been able to access information. So even going on recently, very recently, the information is not there and is not open to us. So that's as a consequence.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Strawn.
Thank you, Chairman. I had a concern the weekend when I was trying to get information about this to comment on it sensibly, and I just couldn't gain access or find anything about it. But the question I've got is we've just discussed the new station footbridge and lifts to the platform. Is it my eyesight, or is there no mention of this consideration of how it fits into this plan? Because I'd have thought it made sense to actually have the new proposal for the footbridge, etc., shown on this plan. It's not shown as far as I can see, and therefore, how does it fit in? How does it work in with the whole scenario? It just doesn't make sense in that respect. Notwithstanding the fact that I haven't had a chance to consider anything else about it.
Understood. I think these are separate planning applications. We're almost built coming from rather separate pots of money as well. So, and with separate red lines around where the application is. So, I mean, I can't really comment on that, although it's a very fair point that we need to consider the holistic picture. Councillor Strawn, do you want to
come back on that? I fully appreciate that, but surely CBC are working together in some respects on how this fits together. And it just is totally illogical to my mind that we can't actually have it an overlay of it. I'd have thought that CBC are well aware of what Network Rail's proposals are with regard to the station. I'd have thought it would be a matter of common sense, if nothing else, to actually have an overlay of the plan saying this is indicative, if nothing else.
I'm sure there are reasons why it's not as straightforward as that, but Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. Like Councillor Knight, I do think there are some significant improvements in this plan, but we haven't really had due time to consider it. A couple of specific comments that I had. So one was around the zebra crossing, which I believe is one of the things I called for when we considered the previous version. Just in terms of the location, I note it does say it's indicative location, but I think it really would need to be nearer to the junction with Palace Street. Otherwise, everyone walking up from the town centre up Palace Street will just ignore it completely, I think. The proposed pick-up and drop-off operational hours. So I note the times of that and compare with the, and that it's going to be used as a bus holding place, presumably during the day. Just wondering again, from a holistic point of view, how that fits in with the existing arrangements on the station concourse around drop-off and things like that. Again, no information really around that. Again, in terms of the good quality waiting facilities, what is on here is the shelters, but as Councillor Knight says, we don't know what they're going to look like. But also part of an overall good waiting experience, as it were, is the provision of public toilets. And while on this plan it just says potential location for toilet facility, what I am led to believe elsewhere is that the proposal is that would only be a single disabled facility accessible by radar key, and there wouldn't actually be general public toilet facilities available at the station, which, if this is to be a transport interchange and is to be a hub for people travelling to and from Biggleswade, there really needs to be a better provision than that.
Okay. Councillor Mark Foster.
Okay. I'm struggling with this again because we've spoken about this at length in the past. Councillor Fraser, you've I think at one of our previous meetings you were quite clear on what our concerns are, and I still think we've got those concerns. You know, this is not what we really want, but again, it's an unsatisfactory compromise, and I think it's the second time this evening I've used that particular expression. But again, linked into the same reason. There are some good things on this. I like the fact that we've there's the improvement of the junction with Palace Street, so that's going to be a lot safer for residents. The fact that we've got the improvement on the buses, but I can't see why the drop-off on the stopping off section needs to be on Station Road. I genuinely can't understand why that needs to be the case. You know, there's sufficient capacity in my mind within the transport interchange element that should not require a stopping off area in Station Road that then compromises the space for residents, it compromises parking. I don't understand why that's necessary. And it's one of those things that for residents, why do we need to do this when we've got I know that we're planning for the future, but currently the capacity, the number of buses that are going to be using this transport interchange, to my mind, it's going to be far less than what the capacity would be. So for some reason, we've got this drop-off area, which I don't think we need. I think the signage looks fine. I think the fact that there isn't the additional shelters is good. I think the fact that we've got the paving area is much more sort of defined. But again, it's one of those, if the two things were linked together, we would have got a better result. Unfortunately, the two things have always been separate. We've gone through the reasons for that. So we're again, I'm not sure that we can object to it, but my concern will be around this, particularly around the bus stopping off area, and does it need to be there? And I also don't understand personally why. I know there's some safety reasons, so perhaps I should backtrack a bit. But why there isn't a potential use for the bus area or some form of stopping off. But I understand that from central beds officers, that is something that it cannot be allowed, and it will just absolutely have to be enforced, because let's be honest, residents, if there are no buses, residents are going to use this. So if it's not going to be allowed, it's going to need to be enforced. But from a planning point of view, unsatisfactory compromise.
I'll come to Councillor Bond in a moment. Perhaps it would be useful if I just provide a little bit of wider context about the conversations that have taken place. So our position at the last time, as it is laid out in the minutes, which we approved earlier, explains what our response was when we first saw this planning application. Comments namely around we did not think we'd get value for money until we saw a plan for bus layovers and moving them off of the market square. And so we needed to see that plan come in parallel with any planning application, or at least see sufficient progress. The conversations that I understand, I won't speak for Peter, but the conversations that have taken place between Peter and senior central beds officers, which I've been briefed on, have been very positive, and there has been movement to look at other areas of bus standing in the town, one of those options being Station Road. What they don't have yet is a very full picture and of what those bus routes would look like. There's quite a bit to consider. For example, if a bus is not swinging round Century House, is it coming down Market Street? Well, it can't do that on a Saturday because our market's there, so would it have to go up Hitchin Street? So there's quite a bit to consider, even just in the town centre itself, of what those bus routes look like. And there's a lot of work to do there. However, we have seen progress from central beds, but not enough detail, because the last thing we want to happen is for us to then give this a nod, but for somebody at central beds to turn around and say, oh, well, it's just not possible. So without influencing too much, although I appreciate I've been party to perhaps a bit more information than others on this, perhaps given that we have not had time to consider this in detail, we refer back to our holding response of an objection until we see sufficient detail around bus routes and bus standing. We will consider further detail on the planning application as shown to us 2 hours ago via Councillor Whitaker. We can perhaps welcome some of the movement that we've seen on particularly the number of bus shelters, although to Councillor Knight's point, we probably want to see the detail and particularly the elevations to show that they are high quality, as they should be as per the emerging local plan. But we ask that we consider this perhaps again on the 28th of June, if they will allow that, given that this is only 2 hours before the meeting that we've seen the most recent plans. So I'm sorry to give too much away from the chair, but I'd like to say that. I don't know whether or not colleagues support that, but there we go. Councillor Bond.
I'd first like to apologise, gentlemen, that you haven't actually received those documents. I received copies of them a week ago, and I hadn't actually realised it hadn't been shared with town council. I apologise for noticing that. Today, I've also received a representation from Chamber of Trade. I'm not passing comments on this planning application, because that's why I said no tend to normally do so. I was hoping I understood the Chamber of Trade were going to form a meeting, pass their own comments. But there are a couple of points actually made about this drawing, which you might want to draw your attention. Its priority is being changed now. Is the turn from Station Road into Saffron Road is not a priority anymore. The road actually now continues. It's actually so the road's got the priority straight into the bus interchange rather than the right turn up Station Road into Saffron. They're concerned for that reason. Also, vehicles turning right will have issues, and also the build-out they're concerned about regarding large vehicles trying to turn down Saffron Road. That's what's been passed to me. There's a whole list of other things. That's just something from my memory. But I think you're very right. We probably need to review this. Be able to look, there's too much in this plan to be able to make decisions straight away. Be able to review it and be able to also take on the viewpoints of the Chamber of Trade, which I will share with you, and see what we can do, what can be done about it. But clearly, I think a bit more work is required here.
Okay, we're looking for a proposal, I think, at some point, but Councillor Knight.
Your proposal from the chair sounded almost perfect, if that's one I can second. But I do question whether it would be possible or appropriate to invite maybe the planning officer or someone who can give us a bit more support and help to the next meeting to help inform the decision that we will need to make.
Peter, do you have any thoughts on any of this?
Yeah, I mean, I would reiterate some of what Councillor Fade has said. So we are in the, I was going to say we're in the middle. We're in the process of having a good, positive debate with our colleagues at Central Beds. They are listening to us. Some members have been involved in those conversations. The conversations are taking place at the highest level. I feel like we're being listened to, and I feel like they're prepared to come up with a compromise. That compromise hasn't been defined yet. This is not the end of that conversation. Yep. So I think we need to give it some space. We need to try and let them come back to us with something more positive. As Councillor Fade was saying, they've already come up with 5 or 6 different potential options connected to some of the issues that we've raised. They're going away and they're going to find some more. So it's being positively responded to. We just need to give them some opportunity to come back with a more inclusive, more favourable response, and they're equally listening to our issues around value for money at the same time.
Yeah. Councillor Bond.
Just a point about the provided documents. The consultation period is now to extend by 2 weeks. So we've got the more time we have. I think it's the 22nd. So check on. I think it's 22nd. It's definitely been extended.
Okay, Councillor Straw.
Yes, taking into account a couple of points that Councillor Bond's made. One is I think we do need an extension of time to actually consider this, and it would be very helpful because CBC have been to this council before to explain what their concerns were. And I was thinking myself, I'm afraid that the Chamber of Trade comments about the turn into Saffron Road, I can see difficulties there. We have Mr. Bacon, who a resident from Barrett Street, who was complaining about that junction, but I just think that possibly it's now too narrow and too much of a right angle for larger vehicles to go down there, although that might be part of the overall project, is to stop through traffic going down Saffron Road more than absolutely necessary. But certainly I think there could be difficulties with larger vehicles turning there. It may only need a metre or so back, but the junction does need improving there, but I do think there's a practical issue.
Okay. Shall I make a proposal from the chair then, seeing as I seem to have had listened carefully from colleagues? So we have a holding objection. I'd like to propose that we stick with that holding objection for now, partly on the grounds that we have not had sufficient time to consider the further detail in this planning application. Whilst we welcome some of the efforts that have been made, particularly to engage into dialogue over where bus layovers could be and those associated bus routes, we're going to need a lot more detail on that. We appreciate that's a work in progress and these things. We also raised comments over, we thank Central Beds for the movement they've made over bus shelters, but would like to see the elevations and some of the details about the quality of those. Perhaps we add on as well, notwithstanding those comments made by the Chamber of Trade, we'd like to see more detail on the width of this junction, and perhaps we raise concerns over that right turn into Saffron Road, and that's based on others' representations that they've made, if that's the feeling of this meeting. I think we'll then need to bring this back at some point so that we can say yes or no. Perhaps our initial ask is that we ask Central Beds to allow us to have this considered at our meeting on the 28th of June. It will allow us to, we can respond on the morning of the 29th, which is just a week later. Maybe that's our starting position, and if not, we'll find another way to do it. That's hopefully a straightforward response to something that is going to require a lot more discussion at some point. So
meeting 29th of June, I believe it is.
29th of June. That will allow us to go to the 30th of June. Okay, it's still an extra day. We may be pushing our luck, but let's see. If not, we'll need to consider options. So even if that's a one-item agenda extraordinary meeting, because I think this is my personal view is that this is important enough. It's going to far exceed any of our times in this. It's going to be there forever. So is there a seconder for my slightly biased proposal from the chair? But thank you, Councillor Knight. Are there any further comments? No. Okay, so all those in favour of the proposal as outlined, please show. Okay, thank you. That's pretty much everybody. Right, that's item 9P. Item 10. Accounts, Councillor Pullinger, please.
Thank you. I'd like to move that we adopt the detailed balance sheet, the summary income and expenditure by committee, the detailed income and expenditure by committee, and the Lloyds Bank payment listings, all for March 2021.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Knight. Any comments? Councillor Strong.
Yes, just an observation on the payments. We're getting transaction details, but sometimes those transaction details are just a repeat of who the check's drawn in favour of. I wonder perhaps as our account system is being upgraded and looked at, that actually it could tell us what we're buying rather than just the fact that we're paying John Smith X pounds and then it's saying John Smith invoice. So a bit more information about what we're actually spending the money on would be appreciated in the future.
Sure. Yes, go on, Peter.
Thank you for that helpful comment. I would agree with it. On the 10th of June, we will be sharing the indicative outcomes of the finance review. They will then be presented to F&GP and will then go to council. So this is one of the many improvements that we'll have to make.
Thank you. The further comments? No. Okay, so the accounts have been moved and they've been seconded. All those in favour of adopting the accounts as outlined by Councillor Pullinger, please show. That's everybody. Thanks. Item 11A, grant application from Citizens Advice. For members to consider the grant application received from Citizens Advice. Comments, please, Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So I've had a look at the letter that we received, and I think my attention is drawn really mainly to the final sentence, which is we're happy to complete a formal grant application form. What I don't see from this is any really any reason why we should consider this outside of our normal grant process. It's not for something specific that appears to have an urgency that would warrant us, I think, considering it at this time. So what I would actually propose is that we write back to them, thanking them for their request and recommending that they apply in due course when we have our next round of applications for our grant process.
Okay, is there a seconder for that proposal? Frank. Okay, Peter, please.
Just to add some clarity for members, I took the opportunity before today's discussion to look at the grants and funding policy of 2016, which needs some further work on it. Absolutely, work on it. On page 2, almost the penultimate paragraph, it does give committee the opportunity to consider grants outside of the yearly review, the opportunity, if you would wish. I also looked at the expenditure connected to grants. There is some good news. When you look at the other grants and then you look at the community agent, the difference between the budget and commitments is a figure of 7,767. So we're currently forecasting a relatively healthy underspend.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Knight.
Yeah, so I support Councillor Pullinger's proposal. So it's good news that we have potentially some spare budget. I think it would be unfair to consider applications outside of the advertised process. So I certainly support the view that we should revise the process. Maybe the process should allow applications more than once a year, because currently the deadline is the 31st of December for applications, which are then considered in January. But I think it would be wrong to consider something outside of that process unless there were exceptional circumstances. I don't think there are on this.
Okay.
Can I make one more comment?
Yes,
Chair?
please.
It's not for me to say whether it's a positive consideration or not, but we will be having to consider some fairly urgent responses to a community newsletter and the good work that Shirley Leggett and others do in that regard. That might be something we have to consider outside of the process. I'm just letting you know that's something coming.
Yeah, that's fine. I think there's a lot to consider with the way we take and consider grants. Councillor Woodhead, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just a very quick one. I mean, it seems a very good opportunity that to maybe invite Citizens Advice Bedfordshire in to talk about their work, maybe locally at some stage, not putting an urgent time to go on it. Because I'd be very interested to know how this sits across the work that our community worker that does, what social services do locally, what is their adding value, that kind of stuff. But also, just I'd be very interested to know more generally what CAB are doing in the area as a kind of civic thing and obviously have a base in town. So just something to consider, but I mean, I think it's a worthwhile organisation. I benefited from myself, but I do think they've been very kind of vague a bit about what it is they're doing, and I think would be a welcome conversation with both to learn a bit more about what they do.
Are there any last comments? No. Okay, so we have a proposal. The proposal is to say we thank them for their letter. However, we consider this part of our formal grants process, which we know is going to need to be looked at prior to next year. So that's been proposed, that's been seconded. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. I think that is everybody. Item 11B, East-West Rail. Correspondence is attached regarding consultation around East-West Rail. We know that the preferred route option, I understand this consultation is around various station locations and the associated routes with those. So, any comments on East-West Rail? Councillor North.
Well, I'd just like to point out that when this came up with comments quite some time ago, when they were looking at different options with the council, the council decided to go for route E, and specifically rejected route B, on the grounds that it was too close to Biggleswade, that it would cause what's the word? The conglomeration between Biggleswade and Sandy if the line went to the south of Sandy and the big station was developed there, etc., etc. So we in the past have decided against route E. So.
Thank you. Yeah, my memory serves me correctly. There were 5 routes. I'll come to Councillor Strawn in a moment. My memory serves me correctly. There were 5 routes. B and E both went north of Biggleswade, which were preferred. I think B actually touched on part of the East Coast main line, which felt very odd from a route perspective. So we did favour with option E, if my memory serves me correctly. I think this conversation now is about which, more specifically within that wide fan of what E could look like, where specifically would our preference be? That's what we're being asked for. Councillor Strawn, did you have a comment?
Yes, I think that both groups B and E actually don't closely affect Biggleswade. They go north of Biggleswade. They don't go between Biggleswade and Sandy, which was a concern that we had with one of the routes. But I'd just be interested to know what CPRE would do if group B was decided, whether they might be making the same kind of objections there on behalf of those to the south. So I think they're in a slightly difficult situation, but I don't think actually as a town council either of these routes specifically affects the town. And I think in that respect we should be fairly neutral, providing it doesn't have an impact on us. Obviously there will be an impact on the East Coast main line when it does come in, but it would affect either route.
I guess just something to consider is that obviously where the route goes affects potential housing growth, which obviously has a knock-on effect in terms of things like traffic. So I appreciate that might not be what we lead with, but that's what a lot of particularly parishes in the north of Bedfordshire are considering. But Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think the thing that comes to my mind most with this is we haven't actually been formally consulted with, or this isn't a formal consultation request from actually the East-West Rail. This is this is from CPRE, who are asking us to make representations. This is not the actual consultation process asking us to make representations. So they obviously have their view on it and they want us to support it. But I think I would echo the points made already that essentially this proposal is far enough north that it doesn't have any real direct impact on us in Biggleswade. So I think we should probably remain neutral on it.
Councillor Knight.
So may I make a proposal then, which is we take no action? Thank you.
Brown, you're seconding. Okay, just one thing to stress from the chair. I don't know how much people have looked in detail, but part of what is in the document that's being consulted on by East-West Rail is to consider station locations either just south of St Neots or potentially at Tempsford. Now, if I were commuting to Cambridge, for example, from Biggleswade, then do I have to go all the way up to south of St Neots, or would I change at potentially a whole new station at Tempsford? So my personal view is that I think this will have impacts for our residents, and particularly what development at Tempsford looks like, which I'd find it slightly odd if we weren't taking a view on that, in my view, but others will come to their own position. Councillor Woodhead, did you have a comment? So no, you didn't. Very well. Okay, the proposal is to make no comment. Are there any further comments from the floor? No. Okay. All those in favour of no comment? Very well. That's carried. Item 11C, new bidding round. So community asset grant scheme for members to consider the correspondence and guidance received regarding the grant scheme. Councillor, sorry, Peter. Beg your pardon. Go on.
I just wanted to highlight that again, that this is the beginnings of a conversation. So the deadline doesn't end until the 1st of July. There's 200k available for capital match funding. We're not looking for any decisions or any strong guidance connected to what the monies may potentially be spent on today. My own sense is, and there is a paper waiting for PLOS connected to playing fields, play areas. That paper is nearly complete. I haven't seen it yet. I think there will be significant investment required to bring our play areas up to anything like good standard. And I think this would be a perfect opportunity, perhaps, for members to consider some match funding potentially around that. But that's just one option to consider.
Thank you. Comments, Councillor Pullinger?
Thank you. Yeah, so I noted the deadline of the 1st of July, and I also knew that from the previous report that had been made to TCM that you had in mind the play areas. So what I'd like to propose is that we actually refer this to be considered broadly by PLOS as to how that might work as an application, but also not necessarily to rush into doing it in this cycle, because once we've been successful with an application, we can't make another application to this scheme for another 2 years. So I think it's right that we make sure we get the right application in that is successful, rather than rushing to get something in which might not quite be right. So yeah, that's my proposal.
Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Strawn has seconded. Any further comments? No. Okay, so the recommendation is that we basically refer this to PLOS with it basically in mind that there is the good opportunity here to put forward one application for potentially new play equipment and to upgrade our parks, which will be match funded. So all those in favour of that proposal, please. That's carried. Thanks very much. Item 11D, Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. For members to receive the correspondence from Helen Nellis, the Lord Lieutenant of Bedfordshire, regarding the Queen's Award for Voluntary Service. Are we being asked to consider anything here, or do we note it? This is around potentially putting people forward, but Councillor Pullinger?
If no one else is going to say anything, I think we are being asked if we have any nominations, but I think the deadline for that is the 15th of September. So what I would recommend is that at a suitable opportunity before the 15th of September, that we actually put this on the agenda as an exempt item, because obviously if we're going to nominate someone, we don't want it to be common knowledge until they hopefully receive an award. But I think that would be the best way to deal with this item.
For a seconder for that? Councillor Strawn. Okay, any comments? No. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. Thank you. Carried. Item 11E, additional signatory for members to consider adding Councillor Pullinger as an additional signatory, removing Councillor Bond as a signatory. I struggled my way through that. Basically, checks Councillor Bond will be replaced by Councillor Pullinger. Any comments, please? Councillor Strawn.
Yes, just before voting on this, how many signatories are there at present? Are they enough in the clerk's view? And do we need to actually delete one because the wording is additional signatory, and then we probably remove the additional signatory because we're back to the same number if we follow it through. So what would be the appropriate numbers? Because it might be just appropriate just to add Councillor Pullinger, leave Councillor Bondon in case of need.
Did you have a comment on that?
They're currently under our current style of working. There are 5 members and 2 officers who sign checks. But you're right to say, I mean, effectively, Councillor Pullinger would replace a member. However, you know, when we look at the finance review, our current style of working, where we are 99% of what we do is checks, is something that obviously we're looking at, and we want to move towards backs payments. So this is a kind of a temporary fix. But anyway, members would be involved in that decision-making process as well as.
Yeah. Councillor Bond.
I mean, I don't sign any checks, but only last meeting I was here in Christine Council, I was actually asked to sign a check. Rather than remove me, I'm happy to stay on if need be. We don't serve me so much.
Okay, I'm looking for a proposal then, please. Councillor Strawn.
I move that we appoint Councillor Pullinger as an additional signatory, but do not remove Councillor Bond.
Okay, is there a seconder for that? Is that you, Councillor Knight? Are you seconding?
Yep.
Okay. Do you want to speak as well?
Please. Do we have a policy on who the signatories should be? And if not, maybe we should consider drafting a policy.
I haven't read one. I suspect we don't. But I suspect this is all something that needs to be looked at in the finance review, which Peter alluded to. So, okay, we have a proposal. The proposal's been seconded. The proposal is to add Councillor Pullinger and just leave Councillor Bond on there. Are there any further comments on that? No. All those in favour of that proposal, please show. Okay, that's everybody. Thank you. Item 12, items for information. So planning application outcomes, to consider the planning application outcomes as of the 1st of June 2021. Any comments, please?
Note it.
Note it. Okay, thank you. Item B, grants from Autism Bedfordshire for 2021-22. Any comments, please? Are we noting this as well? Item 12C, Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner to receive correspondence from the new Police and Crime Commissioner, Festus Akintosoye, as well as newsletters dating back prior to his election. Any comments? Councillor Strawn?
Well, as I usually comment, actually, I'm not even sure that the new Police and Crime Commissioner himself has actually had the opportunity to have any input into this. What I have noticed is that it was very factual on this occasion as to exactly what is being achieved and what can be achieved. And I found it quite illuminating because some of this information hasn't been available in previous newsletters. But a lot of it is a bit out of date already. So by the time we actually get to consider it, if there's something that we would want to put forward, we're too late.
Okay.
But I think I found it quite illuminating.
I'm sure that's something that the new Police and Crime Commissioner will think about how he engages with town and parish councils. So my guess would be this is the last time we see something in this exact format. I don't know, that's a guess. Sian, did you want to speak?
So we have been approached by the OPCC's secretary to arrange a meeting with him. We are waiting dates and timings from this will be arranged to go in the calendar.
Wonderful. That's great. Thank you, Sian. Councillor Pullinger.
Thank you. So I was just going to suggest that we wrote to Festus Akintosoye to congratulate him on his election and to welcome, hope that we can welcome him to a meeting in the future to discuss police matters.
I'm sure that's noted. Clearly there's some correspondence between our office and his, so I'm sure that could be passed on. Any last comments? No. Okay, so we'll note this. Item 12D, grants. So many grants. Great. For 2021-2022, thank you letters from Biggleswade FM and the Ivor Sprinter. Any comments?
Note it.
Note it. All right, thank you. Item 13, public open session. So to adjourn for up to 15 minutes to allow members of the public to put questions to the council. Each speaker will have 1 3-minute slot and you can ask about whatever you want, subject to it being sort of about the council. I don't know whether we have any members of the public left. Do we have any? Members of the public? Do we know? We'll find out.
Helen will intervene.
Okay, we're going to go live to the back office to see whether we have any more members of the public.
Yes, we have one member of the public present and do not wish to speak.
Can you say that again, Helen? We're having problems hearing you.
Sorry, we have one member of the public present and they do not wish to speak.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for them for staying as well. Very grateful. Item 14, exempt items. We don't have any. So I hereby announce this meeting is closed. Thank you.